I study horses, beauty matched only by their strength. I try and capture a little of that as I move on without your face.
We're about to have our first Noble Farrier signature trim clinic here in Washington State with horse owner Sarah Skinner, coming to us from Arizona. We've known Sarah for a long time. She used to live here in Seattle, but she's out in the desert now and has 2 horses, one Mustang and one Thoroughbred. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a lot of options when it comes to farriers, which is the case for a lot of horse owners. She reached out to us because her Thoroughbred was limping after a farrier's apprentice worked on him, and she realized that her best option was to empower herself and start trimming her own horses. So she's out here for the weekend to learn my signature trim technique, how I developed it, and how to understand hooves and their growth patterns. So in conclusion, Sarah, what were some of the reasons that you called me?
There was a shoer that I thought that I could trust, but I didn't really know. I couldn't vet him. We were in a rural area. There was very few and far between what options that I even had. It was his apprentice, and I liked the shoer. His apprentice did it, and because I trusted the shoer, therefore I trusted the apprentice.
Of course.
And he worked on my big boy, my Thoroughbred, and that's what broke my heart, actually.
As what? That the apprentice worked on your big boy? Because he's very special for you. Because you have him.
And he's not as strong as my Mustang. She could have handled it. She could have just gotten through it, you know. I wouldn't have panicked. But 2 days later, I got on to Sebastian and he wouldn't move. I just got on him bareback and he wouldn't move. And I didn't know why. And he was, and I thought he was just being a grump, you know. Yeah. Come on, Sebastian, let's go. Come on, you know, you're better than this. And then I realized he wouldn't go to his water. Well, finally I just got off of him. I'm like, I'm not going to fight you on this because there's obviously something wrong. And I realized, because his water trough, there's a part of the grassy area, sand, again we're in high desert, so there's lots of different types of terrain, but where the water trough is, there's a bit of gravel. He wouldn't walk to his water trough.
You realized it because he didn't want to walk over the gravel.
Yeah, but then I watched him, because I didn't know, but when I watched him have to go to his water trough, he would pick up his hind real ginger, real high, real ginger, and I'm like, oh shit, that was what the problem was.
I think what makes you so sad and cry is the fact that he's your responsibility and this happened to him under your watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're exactly the horse owner I want to teach, because we're both in it for the better horse and therefore the better relationship with the horse.
I'm not letting that happen again.
Yeah.
Not under my watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
That doesn't happen a lot. People are victims to their situations. They're victims to their whatever level of farriery they can get. And you're here solving that mystery for yourself, so you know, so you can have a standard that is not available to you.
Because I'm my own leader.
And you're not a victim.
Absolutely. I'm not doing that.
For your horse's sake.
Yeah, for my own sake, for my horse's sake, for my family's sake, for my ranch's sake. We don't do victim. We don't do victim in my life.
So right off the get-go from horseshoeing school, I started noticing problems in my approach with horses and not creating the desired outcome every time. And some of my greatest learnings that helped develop my ideas, my philosophies, my methods were all my failures. Really searching for answers has led me to develop these simple, minimal criteria that are super effective and caused me to have a lot of faith in the horse's own ability to do their job and be healthy and be sound when the feet are in a certain proportion to each other and themselves. And it's led to a high level of success where I can't afford to have a mistake on my high level horses. My protocol has been tested to pretty high levels so far, and I'm aiming for even higher.
Before we head out to the ranch and work on some horses, we'll need to discuss hoof anatomy with Sarah. We'll go into greater depth tomorrow, but to start with, we'll list some qualities that we want to see in a hoof and how it should align with the leg.
All right, so I want to go back to a general interpretation for you, Sarah. Now that we know this will be the cannon bone, here's a fetlock joint, here's a pastern, and here's a hoof. And then, so there's a joint here. And I just want you to look at the lines, and in terms of flow, if you're thinking there's a beautiful horse right here. Just as a general proof that you can interpret what you're looking at without a whole lot of education, just by looking at beauty. If this is that horse's leg, and the leg comes down, and the pastern comes out, and the hoof goes out like that, it looks weird. We would call that a broken back axis in a long toe. If the cannon bone comes down and the pastern comes out and the hoof goes like this, it also doesn't have a flow. If the leg comes down, it's really hard to do with the blob there, isn't it? And the hoof comes out, it has a flow. It looks appropriate. If this line is any longer or shorter, it starts to look a little weird to me. The proportions are off. If this line is at any other angle, I guess knowing horses, that would look inappropriate. It doesn't flow. So when we get the lines of the leg, which is what you're going to use, get the pastern and the hoof. When they line up in a rough line, that's called the hoof-pastern axis. And that is what you're going to begin to use to judge your balance. Right. From the fetlock joint through the pasterns through the hoof, when the horse is standing fairly square, those lines will be one. Here at Skyland Ranch with Casey Letterman. She is letting us use her horses here to practice trimming today. So we'll start on this beautiful paying horse here with Sarah Skinner. Begin by just being safe about picking up a horse. Introduction, in terms of safety, he's tied loose. His rope is hanging down. He has the potential to get his head underneath the rope. He also has the potential to step over the yoke. So we gotta watch those things. Situational awareness. You're looking for potential disasters. A lot of leading them is just insisting by constant pressure. I went ahead and reached for it and then he stopped, so I asked him again. Good. The last thing is if he wasn't going to pick it up for me, I put my shoulder into his shoulder gently and push him off of his leg. An amazing amount of it is just expectation and attitude. Nature's all attitude. How you doing, buddy? Good job, Sarah. Good. Okay. Proportional wise and clues about how far we're going to bring this foot back that we haven't talked about yet are the tip, from the tip of the frog to the tip of the toe. We want to see that be about a third. This distance should be about a third of this distance. Does that make sense? So right now, this distance is almost a half of this distance.
Yep.
So by the time we're done, when it's appropriately reduced in a horizontal sense, this distance will be about a third of the overall distance. From here.
Right to here.
Right.
Not here, but here.
Right.
Okay.
A line between the two.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
These are the heels or the buttress of the heels.
Yep.
Well, just for as a starting place, pick out that thread.
Like that, okay?
Yep. Put that, there you go.
Like that?
Now you're on. Yep. That's right. Those are the commissures. By doing this, you're kind of exploring and defining things like depth, concavity, shape, texture. So the same thing as keeping his foot in line with his body when you're underneath him in the other direction. This is called pulling it forward and working on the top.
Okay.
And I'm going to keep his foot in line with his body in the same way, as opposed to moving it out. If anything, you want to be slightly in, and that keeps you from pulling on his shoulder too much. Hold the last perpendicular, and then push down and move. Go ahead. This is going to get easier. And you're just going to file that away.
Is there an easy way to hold on it, or
You can go at an angle like that across. So you can, yep, exactly. Good job. So you don't hit the bottom.
Like music, you get a rhythm to filing and hammering. There's definitely a rhythm to it.
This horse likes you, Sarah.
Gonna make friends with him.
So my shape looks, to my eye, pretty robust. It's nice and broad and round. Good. And the way I measure, I'm looking at 3 3/8 inches. 49 degrees.
Wait, where are you looking at them?
This is an angle gauge, and it just measures a rough angle of the wall.
Where are you looking?
40, 49. You'll be able to see it when you do yours. Go ahead, take it.
How did you do that?
This part goes flat to his foot, and then this arm goes flat to that wall.
Oh.
That's your tab.
And it says 48 degrees?
Yeah, 48, 49. The foot looks pretty appropriate, like on a very superficial level. So I think we're done trimming this foot.
Sarah has a real love of horses,
And that's the foundation of proper horsemanship, and not something we can teach here. If you don't have that, the rest is really pointless. We can teach all the anatomy and technique we know, but if you don't turn around and apply that knowledge from a place of love and service to horses, then you can't stay humble and continue to refine that knowledge and learn more as you go. Sarah is really an ideal student, so I'm glad that we have her here for our first clinic. It's a great experience for all of us, I think. Day one out here at Skyland Ranch went really well. Sarah did very well and showed a lot of confidence and tenacity. We worked on a horse and a mule, both of which were really sweet and patient. I know we're all tired, but I think we're also looking forward to day 2 out here tomorrow. So, let's review. What are some of the negative effects of domestication on the hoof?
And we saw that with the first horse.
Yeah.
You know, the overgrowth in the front 2 feet. And then because he was also old, the back 2 feet were worn because he was wearing them out faster than his 2 front feet. Also, the 2 front feet had shoes on, and the back 2 feet did not. So, and I was saying, well, that was couldn't it be because he was wearing his 2 back feet out naturally as they should? Then also you were also explaining that because he was old and the horizontal line was pretty short, that it could have been also because he was dragging his feet because he was old and he wasn't picking up his feet up like he should. So it was actually, the wear was even more extensive and more dramatic than it even should have been, could have been, right? But we don't actually know for sure, so we have to take that into consideration as well. So we have all these things we have to take into consideration, as well as the overgrowth from the hoof in the front, and also taking into consideration when the last time he was actually shot. So we have all these things to take into consideration.
That's a really good point, because on that horse you saw it was very obvious the distinction between the feet that were nice and short, almost too short, and the feet that were very long. So the negative effect of domestication there is we caused one problem by solving another problem. And so there's always a mitigation that we have to do, and that's where trimming comes in. You're making it too easy on me, Sarah. The number one problem in farriery is overtrimming. It's almost certainly what went wrong with Sarah's horse in Arizona. Humans as a whole just have a tendency to overdo things, and this gets especially dangerous for horses when people aren't taking into consideration each horse's unique circumstances and history. Sarah's picking all of this up really quick, which is affirming for us and the effectiveness of the signature trim and the data behind it. So today I wanted to just go over, in a general sense, all 4 feet at once, and make a loose plan from this point of view, without having seen anything else. So tell me what you think in terms of, let's start with angle. How do the angles relate to each other? Looking at Mr. Cosmo here, I would say his front angles are a little shallower than his hind angles, but pretty close to the same angle, actually.
I'd say his back angles are a little bit shallower than his front angles.
Okay.
His back and that looks pretty good.
Yes.
So I don't think there's a lot of horizontal line we need to fix too much. It's just enough to raise him a bit.
Yeah, good. There's not near as much to do behind as there is in front.
Right.
So we'll be looking to raise angles slightly behind, a little bit more in front, and we'll start by reducing the horizontal growth. Good job. Starting on the long point, like you said this morning.
Yep.
Good. Because everything's proportional, if I just bring back the toe in one spot until it's 1/3 of the overall length, you can see the shape's not right. Now it's ugly shape. So bringing back one section into proportion will really help you see the other sections that are not the right shape or out of proportion. Good. I'm going to show you one more way to double check that this shape is the right shape here. Last thing I'm going to do, and I am going in a sideways stroke like that, like we talked about in the van, and the rasp is perpendicular to the ground, to this plane. So we've mechanically made it the right shape around the coffin bone, reduced breakover, maintained the full thickness strength of the hoof wall in every other section. Accomplished all our goals there. Concavity and the depth of the commissures.
See if they're even?
Right, if they're in even depth.
Well, looks like they're pretty even to me.
Me too. So by doing very little, we attain increased functional angle, maintained vertical depth, improved shape, reduced breakover, maintained strength. All right.
Boy. Boy. Now.
This foot's not very stable, that's why it's hard to wrap.
What?
This foot's not very stable, that's why it's being hard to rasp. Try this. Take that stand out, put this stand on its side, like this. And you're gonna set it on this front like that.
Oh, no, you don't, buddy.
Put this foot here on top of it. Good, perfect. Okay. Yep, you're bracing this knee perfect. You just concentrate on those. Start with lighter strokes. Good job. This is an exaggerated example of how all horses grow.
Yeah.
And because he's long enough, you can see the curve starting to take place.
Mm-hmm.
Good. It's also a good example of the idea that his body is trying to keep his coffin bone in the same place. But as his foot gets long, his natural motion is moving the foot out of the way. There is the tip of the frog. There's the distance ahead of the frog. This distance ahead of the tip of the frog, or the apex, should be 1/3 of this distance to the heels, but actually it's more, this distance is about a half of this distance.
Mm-hmm.
So hand me those nippers.
So this needs to be about there to that would be there.
Exactly.
We're going to do half and half. Right? Or 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. So that's going to be our guide. Hand me those nippers. Right around where that distance would be. And we already pointed out it's right about in there.
Yeah.
Good. I'm going to cut out an arc and an arc right around that point.
Yep.
Good. So now I have the proportions are a lot closer than they were. Okay. Once you do that on your foot.
Okay.
You don't have to take the whole cut at one time. You can take chunks or layers back to that point also. if you can't open the jaws that way. So it completed that.
Yeah, they're right there.
All the way to the edge. Yep. You use sharp nippers, you'll be like, wow. It's so much easier.
Need some nippers.
That's right. Twist. You're like, I am twisting. Yeah, open, twist. All right.
Good boy, wrapper.
Now the shape is off, but the length is pretty good.
Yep.
It's an appropriate place to stop. Alright, on our last day, I want to send you away with some general concepts that are going to keep you safe. If there's a question, do less. You won't go very wrong very fast by doing less. You'll go wrong fast by doing too much. So you can always err on the side of doing too little. Because especially in your situation, you're going to be able to come back, do a little more. You're going to be able to come back, look at it again, fresh eyes, fresh perspective, do a little bit more. For you, doing a little bit often is going to be super effective in terms of changing Sebastian's angles to a more appropriate angle based on what you've learned, allowing that sole callus to develop, and having an amazing gallop down the gravel road. So, that is just a general piece of advice. If you're in question about what to do a little less.
Okay.
Good, and that'll keep you safe, and that it's human nature to try to do a lot all at once, and that is opposite of what they need. Good. Okay, we talked about in the van, it takes 9 months for the hoof to grow from top to bottom. And because of the growth patterns, because the hoof distorts to grow, and because the distortions change muscle patterns, they play off of each other, it's going to take probably 2 years for his muscle patterns to adjust to his new feet angle, and therefore his feet angle adjust to his new muscle patterns. So you're going to, in essence, the cycle in between every trim is going to be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And that's why it takes you more than 9 months to get to ideal angles, ideal vertical growth, ideal toe length, all those things. Just a little bit at it all the time, a little bit often, and give it time.
Okay.
Okay. The last piece is they should be as comfortable when you're done as when you began. So, and you know this from experience, if they're not as comfortable after you're done, you did something wrong, which is most likely too much. And you know which direction most likely too much was. Vertically.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So with those pieces of general advice, we'll go into trimming these last couple horses of the clinic. And I feel like we should start with Curly here.
I know, I like Curly.
I like Curly. So let's just verbally go over what you see and therefore what the plan would be. And look at the feet on their own and then the feet in relationship to each other. We're looking at toe length and angle.
What's that one?
The pastern,
Yeah, well.
the height of the heel, the bull.
Yeah, the height of the heel versus the height of that heel.
Oh, good, okay.
You see that?
Yeah, I do.
So I would look into that, which is what I was seeing in the dorsal hoof here, the dorsal plane here, the dorsal whatever.
Yeah, the toe.
Yeah, the dorsal. So I was seeing more of a flatter horizontal
Okay.
angle.
Good.
So I noticed the same thing in vertebra. So there's something going on there, I think. Maybe, but I could be missing things.
Oh, that's a really good observation, actually. It's like the diagonal feet have a higher heel than in the right front left hind and the left front, right hind are also a little lower.
That's a good girl. Again, I don't think that her feet were badly shaped at all.
Yeah.
I didn't think she had bad shaped feet at all. So I'm just gonna give her more of a lift.
So you got a nice shape coming from. It looks nice and robust.
And that is the goal.
That's the goal.
I'm gonna put her down. Take a look.
All right. Make sure as you're pulling that foot forward that you keep your knee bent.
Alright, remind me then.
Okay, I will.
That might have been when I stumbled as yeah.
So just rounding that top edge to make it smooth and blunt.
Good girl, Curly. There's a good girl. That's a good girl.
Nice little foot.
Yeah.
We look at symmetry of shape, the depth of the commissures. We've created a really beautiful round shape. And that beauty is a good first sign of balance.
So what I'm looking for here, initially, is I'm looking at the shape, for one. And then I'm also looking for the balance. And also the leveling of, the balance of where the hook lines with the level of the frog here, right there.
Is a measure of heel height.
Is a measure of heel height, so it looks really, really good. It's in line and almost above, but not anything above.
Just barely above.
And where the heel or where the toe comes in, there's a nice,
Concavity.
pardon?
Concavity.
Yeah, well, there's a nice concavity, and just, it goes right straight into that line. And it's a nice 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
You got it.
So we got the really nice spatial things that I'm looking for. As far as the texture, I'm not going to trim anything, because there's no rim that I need to be concerned about. Everything looks really healthy, so I'm not going to be cutting or nipping anything. And especially also because I'm looking here and everything looks really good and safe and strong. So I'm just going to bevel and level.
Good job. Good. Just put a quick bevel.
It's just because my knee wasn't on her, that's why.
Okay. Doesn't have to be a big bevel. Just a little take off the sharp edge. And now it looks like a beautiful, robust foot.
Uh, 55.
Okay, good. So within a degree of each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Line on each foot to your eye.
Three and a half.
Okay. All right. Well, we've had a good 3 days with Sarah Skinner.
This has been awesome. I've learned an incredible amount, more than I even thought it was possible. And I feel really confident that I can go back and trim my horses and just feel confident that I know what to do. And if I don't have any, if I have any questions, I feel really safe that I can call.
Yeah, give me a call.
Yeah, call Noble and ask questions. And what do you think?
I'm excited to see how you do with your horses, and then also for you to see the patterns progress in a positive way. A more comfortable horse, be able to ride, gallop down that road.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun to see how it changes over the next couple months.
Yeah.
And over the next year.
Yeah, and I hope what I see the benefit of this type of education is it gives the rider the opportunity to be able to take matters in their own hands and be educated with not only the language but also the tools to solve problems as they come up immediately, and be able to be the leader of the pack, in so to speak, and find their solutions instead of being the victim of the problem. So that's what I did, and I encourage anybody who has inkling of gaining more knowledge and more education for the betterment of their animals and their horses. Take instruction, get education. Yeah.
Have a baseline standard that you know.
Yeah, especially from an expert like Seth.
Even if you don't want to do the work yourself, at least you have, like you said, tools and words and vocabulary and common language to talk to your farrier from and become a team rather than just someone you hired. You have a basis to be able to talk from and evaluate.
Yeah, and it also allows you to be able to know who you want to hire, because you already have the vocabulary. So you're not being talked at or being sold a bag of tricks. You have the vocabulary, so now you are empowered to be able to hire the right farrier with your same goals.
That's a good way to put it. Same goals, same standards.
Yeah, same vision.
Yeah.
And know what you're talking about. Not be fooled, not be tricked.
And always end up with a good result.
Yeah. When I got back, I was able to see Sebastian's feet, and where I was able to see where the previous farrier had gone wrong, and to see where the horizontal and the vertical and the concavity had been compromised. And that was really empowering because now I understood not only the language, but I also understood how to fix that. And being out where I am, which is literally in isolation, because as you guys probably already know by now, I'm out in 100 acres, and we don't have a lot of good farriers that I can count on. But now that I know what I'm looking at, now that I know how I can fix that, and now I have the language and the tools, because I was able to go to Noble Fair and learn, it's amazing what I can do now, and that is invaluable. And so been able to work with Sebastian's feet now twice and see how his feet have already started to shape in the form that is healthy, and being able to watch him move in stride that is healthy, and watch him move that makes him feel good, and that feels amazing.
In terms of vertical depth, to lower the angle, which would be appropriate in this situation.
Well, I mean, I can take more off the horizontal, but you could also look at some of the vertical here.
Right, it's in the heel.
Because that's what we did there. We should possibly look into, because there's some pretty deep right in here. I could really do it.